We are a 95-year-old publication, and for a lot of that time, the magazine was just a magazine, and it looked like this. It was really more of an academic journal somewhere in between. And when I joined HBR about 9 years ago, the website looked about like this too. We were very, very late to the web. And the editor-in-chief at the time was, I don't know if this is actually true, but I was told when I joined the digital team, the newly formed digital team, that he had said, "We are HBR, we will be blogged about, but we will never blog." And I joined to help launch a blog network. And so things did change really fast, thank goodness. And the magazine has changed a lot too, which in some ways has been as much of a cultural shift as becoming so much of a digital media company. And so we now have about 7 million unique visitors a month. About half of those are under 35, which I still continually shock people within the company by telling them that. I don't know, it's so hard to get people to really understand that. And we're on Facebook Live, we're on Alexa, we're on just about anywhere. We're on Slack. We're one of the first media companies to actually be doing content on Slack, which has been really exciting. So what I want to talk about is how we think about those platforms in terms of being primarily a subscription-based business model and a really high-priced subscription. It's about $99, give or take. And so we originally kind of thought about this. We do have other revenue streams. So we have an advertising business, we have a book business, we have even an e-commerce business, but subscriptions is the most important piece of it, and that's becoming increasingly true. And so right now we have really aggressive goals to think about growing that subscription business and really making it primarily digital. We're starting to think about what does it mean when we don't have print anymore. So what we've thought about a lot is, originally we talked about this a lot in terms of the funnel, but a funnel doesn't work very well when you're trying to take a lot of people who are coming from social and reading a piece or two of free content and then trying to get them to buy a $99 yearly subscription to a magazine. You get a very, very small conversion rate. And we don't need a huge conversion rate because that's a lot of money that we get per subscription. But there's been a lot of anxiety internally about, is this the same audience? Are these people ever going to convert? Are we creating a substitute instead of a complement to the subscription? What does it mean to have the subscription be digital? So one thing that's really important to know is that we're mission driven. And that really matters when we're thinking about distribution and when we're thinking about our business model as well. So our official mission is to improve the practice of management in a changing world, which is kind of terrible. And really we think about it mostly in the opposite terms, which is really about trying to improve the world by changing management. And so that means that we need scale. And this is the way we've been thinking about our content for years now. So it's really 3 concentric circles. There's, and what we try to do is change the way people work and change the way they can influence the world and what they understand about the world in all of these domains. And so it's you and your team, your career, your relationships with the people you work with, then it's your company, and then beyond that, it's the economy and society. Part of the theory we work on is that and part of the idea that's driven a lot of what we've done online and that we're now finally getting to prove with data is that it used to be, when I started, the assumption was that early in your career, you would be in the middle. You would only care about or be able to influence or really need to understand just the people you talk to every day. Then you got more senior, and then you actually had to think about things like strategy and your company's position within the industry and company level topics. And then, you were the CEO, and then you had to think about your industry and the huge trends affecting your company and what your company's place was within the economy. And that's all collapsed for all sorts of reasons. So companies have flattened. You now need to understand all of these levels very early on in your career. And at the same time, you don't get to just be the CEO and tell people what to do because you're the CEO. You have to use soft power. You have to persuade people of things. You're also worried about your career because you probably aren't going to have a job for very long. And you're actually worried about things like getting enough sleep. So basically what this means, which is great for us in terms of both our business model and our mission, is that much more than anyone ever anticipated, that our small number, not tiny, but our small relatively number of paying subscribers actually care about, and many of whom are very, very senior and some in very large companies, actually care about a lot of the same things as our 7 million people who show up every month. And that's been great for us. And what we've done over time is really try to improve the quality of the digital content so that it's really equivalent to the magazine. And when we redesigned the website a couple of years ago, we adjusted the paywall to reflect that. So now the paywall treats digital content and magazine content exactly the same way, whether it's short form, long form, whether it appeared in the magazine or not, the paywall treats it the same way. So the paywall is another whole conversation and complicated and difficult, and I won't even try to get into that here. But really what I want to talk about is how we thought about how our digital content and our digital audience, and then beyond that, our distributed audience and content really support that premium subscription model. So we have really increased our ability to analyze data over the last few years, which has been really, really exciting. Not least because as an editor, I had all of these theories about how things worked, and I had no data to confirm any of it. And our, honestly, our commercial side and the way they thought about things, and our editorial side and the way we thought about things was not always aligned. And what's really happened is that we've been able to do some really interesting modeling that has, one, it's proved that what I was just talking about the audience and kind of who's interested in what content, but it's also allowed us to really see some of the relationships between the sort of free content we publish every day and all of the other formats that we publish in. So we've had a podcast since 2006. We're on Facebook. We do all of these other things. We're really starting to come up with a theory that we have data behind about how those things support the most important piece of our business model. So one thing we did was we did some modeling. So this took a long time, but we now have a customer database that has a lot of information. We have a ton of information about our subscribers. We have a lot of information about our registrants. When we redesigned, we did a lot with kind of, our theory was that if we had your information and we got you to register for something, that was sort of a level of commitment that would help us get you to subscribe. And we had this sort of linear idea of that being part of this journey, which turned out not to be exactly true. A lot of people who subscribe go straight from being anonymous visitors to subscribing and then register after that. But we did this project, and this one is just about looking at registered users and seeing what factors we could look at with registered users that would predict whether or not they would subscribe. And we're working on this now with anonymous users, and we're also looking at it in terms of renewals. We know some stuff about renewals that kind of supports this as well. But basically, we looked at all of these different behavioral factors that were pretty simple. And we found three big trends, three big things that really affected conversion. So the first one, and really I think in a lot of ways the most important one, is frequency. And this was great because it had really supported something that from an editorial perspective we'd been saying all along, which was that almost all of the other measures are easy to game. They could mean one thing, they could mean the opposite. Changing behavior in terms of technology has really undermined a lot of what they mean. Frequency is the one thing that just means what it means. It's hard to game it. If you come twice, so we use 3 times in a month as our kind of magic measure, because I figure if you came twice through social, that might have been totally by accident. If you come a third time, it's probably because you meant to come back, and you're not going to come back if you didn't like what we did the first time. So it was just sort of simple, but that makes sense. It turns out that frequency really matters when it comes to conversion. We also know that it really matters in terms of retention. So getting subscribers to come, this is something I'll talk about more, frequently to the digital content is incredibly important. So the people who read both the magazine in print and who visit digitally, the more platforms they're visiting us on and the more frequently they are, the more likely they are to be there. The differences in how satisfied they are in just surveys is enormous. And then the difference in renewal is really big too. So that's a big thing that's important in all of this. So frequency made a big difference. Recency made a huge difference. From an editorial perspective, that doesn't mean very much to me because I can't really do anything about recency. But from a marketing perspective, that makes sense because it tells them when they need to, when they need to send messages to people. From my purposes, recency just means frequency. The other thing, obviously, is engagement. So we look at a lot of different things, like saving an article, subscribing to a newsletter, those sorts of things. So the obvious thing from all of this is that we would want everybody to be in this sweet spot where they're coming frequently and they're highly engaged. And that is very true from the perspective of a person. We want people to be coming frequently and be very engaged. That breaks down, though, so the natural thing then is to think, okay, well, when we think about what content we should be investing in and what content we should be pushing people to, it should be the content that people are, that we should be trying to make everyone more engaged and more frequently coming to everything, and anything that doesn't push people in both of those directions, we should stop doing. So the matrix would be, we only do the stuff up there and we stop investing in everything else. The problem is that that's not really how it works when it comes to experiences. So what our theory is right now, and this is a working theory, is that really you need lots of different kinds of experiences in order to get somebody up into that top right corner. So the way we think about this, and we have a tendency to take a lot of our own medicine, not always well, but this is a theory that we've published that is from David Edelman at McKinsey, and it's a marketing theory that's been around for a while. But it's really about how in the digital world, the funnel doesn't really exist anymore. It's more of a loop, and people are constantly kind of thinking and rethinking, and really the goal is to get them to a point where they are so attached to you that they just stop making decisions, and then they're in this loyalty loop, and you're not having to convince them anymore. They're just there, and they have the habit, they love you, they're not going anywhere, and then you're set. So the way we think about this is a little bit of an extrapolation, but we think of our content in two main ways. And one thing is really, so we see sort of two different kinds of behaviors. One is seeing what's new, so that's a big thing people come to us for, is to see what ideas are new. A lot of that is brand new research, that's something we do online a lot. The other thing is sort of, what should I be understanding about the context of the business I'm doing? What are the management ideas I should be thinking about, and how do I stay competitive? The other thing is solving problems. So, I hit a crisis at work. I should know something that I don't know. I'm panicking. I go to HBR. I try to solve the problem, and then I'm set. So those sort of roughly align to social on one hand and search on the other hand. So one way we think about this is that all of that seeing what's new behavior, the coming to us on social, which we do really well on social, is really for us about setting the habits and building the habits and building the trust so that when somebody does have that crisis at work, they don't even hesitate. They know that they can come to us and find the answer. Then they come to us. If we do a good job, they find the answer, we save the day, and we earn their loyalty. And that's, in our idea of this, is that moment where they hit that loyalty loop, and then we've got them. And so it really feels like this is the thing that works more than sort of hitting the paywall, making this really rational decision. I mean, I think very few people hit the paywall and think, this is the HBR article that is going to be worth $99 to me. I don't think anybody does that. Basically, what we hear is, you saved me enough times that I just realized that I just needed to subscribe. So in terms of how our content fits with this, I think about it, I sort of mapped everything that we do, roughly, onto that same matrix. And it turned out it was interesting when we did this because it kind of fell naturally into these quadrants that kind of match different parts of our business model. So basically, the bottom right is the stuff that doesn't take a lot of time to interact with. It's fast, it gets faster and more frequent as you go along. So we have a Slack bot that gives you some content every day, and we're working on that too. It's just super simple right now, and we're working on making that more complicated. But right now, it's basically a kind of piece of advice every day. We have a management tip that's been going out for years every day, and for a lot of people, that's the number one way they interact with us. We publish articles every day, and then we've been doing things on other platforms. We have podcasts. We've been doing a lot on Facebook Live, and so basically everything in this quadrant, we're kind of okay with it being on a distributed platform, because really, and this is something that I hope this is true. I really believe that this is true, that if we do this stuff right, it doesn't actually matter if you're on our platform or not. Really what matters is that as long as you know that it's coming from HBR, and as long as it has our voice, and as long as it has our level of quality that you expect, then I don't really care where you're getting it. What matters is that you're interacting with us frequently and you're building that trust and that loyalty. So the bottom other side is where we really optimize stuff to be evergreen and to be searchable. And that's where we just do stuff that when you have that problem, you'll be able to find the answer to it. And so that again is just sort of in small ways helping you out when you need it. The top right is really important, and that's the sort of periodic stuff. It's the magazine. It's things that are immersive. It's things that you get the whole deal, and you get it regularly. If you're a subscriber, you have some access to it, even if you're not. But it helps to be a subscriber. We do put a ton of investment in here. And then the top left is where it really becomes about implementing ideas in your actual organization, which is really important. So really quickly, a few examples. So a huge thing we're doing with Facebook is just using it as a lab, basically. It's, we have to be pretty careful. We're such a premium brand. We can't make lots of mistakes. In a lot of places on Facebook, we can make a lot of mistakes. We did Facebook Live. It was a mess. We did it every day at first. We had no idea what we were doing, but we learned a ton, and we learned a lot. So we're thinking a lot right now about how we're going to expand subscriptions and premium subscriptions and community and what that can mean. So we're just trying a bunch of stuff on Facebook. It's not going to stay on Facebook eventually, or at least some form of it will, but the real thing we're trying to do is learn a lot so that we can create really premium products. So we do these whiteboard sessions that may turn into something super high-end. We just started a Facebook subscriber community that 3 times as many people as we thought were going to signed up, because everyone assumes that our subscribers aren't on Facebook. They totally are. And that's really thinking about what we might do with a community on our own platforms eventually. We also really try to meet people where they are, and really it's important to us to be really integrated into people's workday, which is why we're on Slack. We also, I started doing this, it's a little crazy, but we realized that one thing that was preventing subscribers to the magazine who loved getting the magazine every month or two, they were just really overwhelmed by the amount of stuff we were publishing on a day-to-day basis, and they couldn't really handle the website. They didn't know what to do with the stream. So I write this myself so that it has a voice and so that they really trust it. And every week I curate just a few things from the site, and I really focus on what complements the magazine. So I really focus on new research and on kind of what we're saying about what's going on in the world. And so that's the insider. And then the last thing, really quickly, is that we are trying to innovate in that top right corner, too. So the big idea is something that we created that is really trying to figure out how to start experimenting with that magazine, immersive, unfolding kind of experience that's purely digital. So this is a really complicated kind of program of content around a big idea that unfolds over a number of days. There's often an event, there's a calendar, and content comes out over time, and there are going to be community aspects of it. We're trying something different every time. But that's sort of the other end of the continuum of distribution things we're experimenting with. And that's it.
Questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Just a second.
All right, since we're both coming from paywalled media, I'm really curious about that Facebook group you were just talking about that you built for subscribers. Is there anything more you can say on that about what you're potentially doing with that group specifically compared to what you're doing on Facebook more broadly, or is it so new that you're still trying to figure it out?
It's so new, and we really just kind of did it very quickly without much planning, which is the great thing about these platforms, is that you can do that, and we have this freedom that we don't have on our own platforms. So we don't really know, which is great, because we're really trying a lot of different things. But one of the real things that we're trying to figure out is to really see how the subscribers interact with each other. And what we're finding out early on is that they're actually much more interested in each other than they are in us. So we're doing a lot less of kind of, here's some content, why don't you talk about it? And people are bringing pretty, the group is really interesting. It's 3,000 people. We didn't invite all of our subscribers. We tried to keep it small just because we have no idea what we're doing. And really a lot of what they're most interested in so far is somebody has a problem, they bring it to the group, and other people respond. So that's sort of what we're interested in seeing what happens.
Excellent. Thank you.
How much of that do you use then for lead generation on stories, like a discussion that began on Facebook and you're like, wow, why didn't we think of that? Let's build out some content on that.
That's something that we've definitely started to do. And we've had editors go on there and say, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys think? We're really excited about that part of it. We're also, another thing, we've been thinking a lot about the whole idea of, are we a two-sided platform? And, we were probably the original contributor publication. We've been expert written since 1922. But so we really think about the value to our contributors as well, a lot of whom are academics. And so we've figured out this really exciting thing recently where we realized that one problem that business academics sometimes have is finding companies where they can do research that are the right kind of companies. And we realized that we might be able to solve that. So I was just talking to some researchers, and I was asking them all these questions about their research because I thought it was so exciting. And they said, well, those are great questions, and we can include those when we go back out, but we're having trouble finding the right companies. And I said, I think I can solve that for you. So we're actually going to go to the subscriber group and say, who wants to work with these academics? It works for everyone. So, yeah.
Very good.
So,
Excellent. Thank you,
you.
Katherine Bell.